You've seen Pretty Woman countless times. Vivian's fairy tale transformation, Edward's suave million-dollar smile, the glamorous shopping montage on Rodeo Drive. But lurking just beneath that polished Cinderella story are scenes so raw, so revealing. They were cut from every theatrical release, and virtually no one was supposed to talk about them. Today, we're peeling back the velvet curtain to unearth the forbidden footage that sheds new light on Vivian's journey from streetwise survivalist to boardroom visionary. Get ready, because the happy ending you cherish might just be the half-truth. It all begins with an alternate opening that never made the script. Instead of the iconic slow-motion payoff where Vivian steps into Edward's limo, there's a raw version showing her breaking into tears alone in a dingy motel bathroom. Camera angles linger on the running faucet, her mascara streaks, the whispered panic in her voice as she rehearses her sophisticated greeting one more time. Director Gary Marshall ultimately deemed it too dark, fearing audiences would lose their romantic getaway vibe. But that scene exposed Vivian's deepest fear, that she was bargaining not just for companionship, but for safety in a world that taught her to be distrustful. Transitioning from that unscreened sorrow, there was another moment. This one involving Edward's business etiquette lesson in the boardroom that radically altered his character arc. Instead of the polished toast scene, the original footage cut to Edward's private office late at night, where he scribbles date arrangements on a post-it, hemmed in by old Wall Street trading floor photographs and the harsh glow of fluorescent bulbs. He pauses to stare at Vivian's framed scarf, clearly torn from one of those first hurried escapades, and his clenched jaw reveals more vulnerability than the final cut's smooth banker. Why remove it? Editors felt it exposed too much, hinting at his guilt over exploiting power dynamics rather than raising him to a moral pedestal. But perhaps the most controversial deletion involves the hotel hallway encounter. In the version you know, Vivian emerges at dawn in full glam, sporting couture and confidence. In the forbidden cut, she steps into a blood-spattered hallway, having just witnessed a violent mugging 2 doors down. The camera lingers on her horrified reaction before Edward sweeps her into the limo, glossing over the trauma that originally shaped her urgency to escape. Producers argued that including this incident would derail the fantasy, yet it underscores the real stakes. Vivian isn't just on a Cinderella quest, she's outrunning a life defined by danger. Leaping ahead, there's an alternate montage of lessons and social graces. Instead of the Johnny shopping with Vivian track, the deleted version sets her against a discordant piano score, stumbling through etiquette drills with crash courses in French pronunciation that end in tears. A public relations consultant appears, lecturing her with cold precision about maintaining image and public perception. Behind that upbeat retail therapy lies a brutal training regimen, one that would have humanized Edward's privilege but probably made audiences wince at the ugly price of becoming a lady. Then there's the secret rooftop confession. Rather than zipping off to a Ferris wheel surprise, Vivian originally climbed to the plaza's rooftop terrace in a raw, unguarded moment. She drops her gloves, revealing a bandaged knuckle from self-defense lessons, and tells Edward about her childhood nightmares of abandonment and betrayal. She challenges his savior complex. This isn't magic, Edward. It's survival. The scene was scrapped for time and tonality, yet it's a linchpin, one that transforms her from passive fairy tale recipient into an equal partner demanding respect. Finally, in the closing moments, instead of that triumphant knock on the Suite 2704 door, an unseen sequence shows Edward tearing out a page from his own appointment book, his board colleague's urgent meeting, the stockholder lunch, so he can keep his promise. That cutaway would have reinforced his sacrifice, reminding viewers that his vow was more than romantic bravado. It demanded real cost. But too much realism clashed with the film's glossy fairy tale metaphor, and it was excised. These deleted scenes were buried in the vault for decades, accessible only to a handful of insiders. But now, with recovered reels, we can finally piece together the fuller narrative, a story that's at once darker, more complex, and infinitely more human. So next time you feel that flutter at Julia Roberts' smile or Richard Gere's sigh, remember, behind each iconic frame lies a forbidden truth, begging to be acknowledged. One of the least-known excisions involves a deleted sequence where Vivian arrives late at a studio dinner party for Edward's business associates. In the theatrical release, We only see her emerge in evening wear as cameras flash at dawn, but the original footage reveals an entire scene inside the hotel's grand ballroom that was considered too gritty by the producers. Vivian, still uncertain about etiquette, accidentally spills a glass of red wine on a board member's jacket. The reaction is raw panic on her part and sharp disdain from the onlookers before Edward steps in with a quick apology. This moment underscores the power imbalance lurking beneath the film's glamorous facade, reminding us that real-world class prejudices don't vanish over champagne flutes. Test audiences reportedly found the scene uncomfortable enough to slow down the film's romantic momentum. Director Gary Marshall ultimately cut the footage after feedback that it brought the wrong kind of attention to Vivian's struggle. Today, only a few still photographs survive, showing Julia Roberts mid-panic, trembling with embarrassment as unknown extras glare. That excised dinner sequence would have deepened our understanding of how much Vivian risked every gesture, every breath, just to cope in Edward's world. Another forbidden moment emerges in the jazz piano bar scene, originally intended as a turning point in Vivian's self-discovery. In the version you know, Edward orders a single martini and the camera lingers on their playful exchange as street musicians play in the background. In the scrapped footage, the scene extends far beyond their flirtatious banter into a darker confession between the two characters. After sharing a drink, Edward leads Vivian to a private booth where his own fears of loneliness come spilling out. The dialogue, written in Richard Gere's own margin notes, reveals that he spent nights haunted by the idea of meaningful connections slipping through his fingers. Vivian counters by sharing how she composes bedtime stories for herself in frayed motels, inventing characters smart enough to escape their own traps. That frank exchange ends with neither a smile nor a wink, but a mutual nod of understanding, setting the stage for their later romantic reckoning. Studio executives feared audiences wouldn't embrace such mutual vulnerability so early in the narrative, preferring the lighter, superficial version. This cinematic casualty reminds us that Pretty Woman could have become a much more introspective film if given the chance. Then there's the vanished morning walk scene that originally opened the second act. In an extended cut, Vivian actually steps out of the Plaza Hotel before dawn, trading Cinderella's glass slippers for worn sneakers and lipstick-free lips. Walking the empty New York streets, she pauses at a bakery to inhale the scent of fresh bread and contemplates whether she's truly ready for Edward's world. She lingers by a bus stop, watching night shift workers board buses in quiet solidarity, their tired eyes echoing her own uncertainty. The camera captures her bare face in low light, each freckle and blemish laid bare in a testament to her vulnerable honesty. That scene would have offered a stark contrast to her high-gloss shopping spree, positioning her not as an idealized fantasy, but as a real woman navigating an alien landscape. Producers axed it for pacing reasons, citing concerns that such a reflective moment would interrupt the film's rising action. However, the raw footage survived in private vaults and gives a rare sense of how the script fearlessly explored Vivian's inner life. Today, history buffs and film students scan grainy bootlegs of the morning walk to capture its humbling intimacy. An even more meta-revelation lies in a sequence where Vivian performs an impromptu reading of Edward's toughest corporate speech. Early drafts had her reciting the chairman's remarks to a group of executives in the boardroom, her emotive instincts forcing Richard Gere's character to pause mid-oration. This unscripted moment, captured on residual sound tapes, showed how Vivian's sincerity could diffuse the cold logic of big business without sacrificing authority. Her spontaneous delivery earned gasps from on-set crew members, who described the exchange as an electrifying collision of two worlds. Producers, uneasy that a street-smart outsider might upstage Edward in his own milieu, reworked the scene into the tamer corporate toast you know today. Yet the original role offers a glimpse of how Vivian could become a catalyst not just for romance, but for genuine transformation in Edward's world. That archival exchange remains one of the most tantalizing what-if scenarios of the 1990s romance genre. Julia Roberts herself has occasionally teased fans about rumors of that off-the-cuff reading, winking at the camera during interviews. The vanished boardroom audition underscores the film's unfulfilled potential to challenge the rigid structures it may ultimately romanticize. Beyond these scraps lies an even more ambitious prologue intended to frame the entire film from Vivian's perspective, an ambitious opener lost to time. In the original script, the camera follows her through her daytime life on Hollywood Boulevard, capturing the unfiltered routines of her work, the banter with fellow girls, and her trademark humor. She trades gossip at the beauty salon in rhythmic dialogue that introduces secondary characters who never appear in the released version. The prologue toggles between her world and Edward's Stark office, emphasizing the chasm between their realities before any limousine ever arrives. By skipping this opening, the film immediately thrusts viewers into Edward's domain, depriving us of a richer context for Vivian's fears and aspirations. Screenwriters admitted they feared pacing issues, but later lamented the loss of a narrative frame that would have elevated Pretty Woman into a true dual-protagonist drama. Traces of this prologue survive in original location scouting footage, where you can spot the Coconut Grove nightclub and a neon-lit payphone booth. Some of those clips have surfaced in DVD extras, tantalizing fans with fleeting glimpses of the script's ambitious first act. That vanished prologue reminds us that Pretty Woman was always on the brink of more daring territory than the final cut allowed. Finally, the most debated omission resides in an epilogue sequence that never saw daylight. After the triumphant hotel door reunion, original footage cut to Vivian settling into a modest apartment of her own. She decorates with thrift store finds and a custom painting of the plaza skyline that Edward commissioned but never gifted on camera. In this scene, she hosts a farewell brunch for her former friends and colleagues, toasting their shared survival story with cheap mimosas. There's even a moment where she reads a heartfelt letter from Edward, revealing plans to invest in her independent boutique. The tone is quieter, more personal, a glimpse of how her life truly unspooled after the credits rolled. When test screenings led to complaints that the epilogue felt too real, it was excised to preserve the closing fairy tale high. Now, these final frames circulate among collectors as proof that the film's creators valued fantasy over nuanced reality. That lost epilogue completes the forbidden tapestry, illustrating that Vivian's happy ending was never as tidy as it appeared. There's another hidden scene set within the famed Rodeo Drive boutique that didn't survive final edits. In this deleted sequence, Vivian enters the store alone before Edward arrives, dragging remnants of her street clothes rather than flaunting a designer ensemble. A senior sales attendant, played by a veteran character actress, approaches with polite curiosity. Instead of the playful banter in the theatrical version, we see Vivian's self-conscious pause as she tests a sequin gown, probably 2 sizes too small. The mirror frames her uncertainty, and the film's original camera lingers on her trembling shoulders as she asks, "Is it too rich?" The attendant's measured response, kind but detached, highlights the unspoken language of wealth that Vivian must navigate. In the extended fashion montage, that moment unfolds over 6 takes, each time adding jagged cuts to stress Vivian's emotional distance from glamour. She struggles with puffy eyes and a voice that cracks when she practices her name drop. Mrs. Edward, just Forrester. A pair of designers stand behind her like gallery curators, pivoting mannequins and offering silent critiques that feel more surgical than supportive. One close-up shows a drop of sweat sliding down her temple beneath the spotlighted chandelier, a candid detail excised as too raw. Test audiences gasped at that silent bead of sweat. They weren't ready to see a heroine so human. Yet that small cut reveals how close the final film came to a darker tone, one that underlined Vivian's grit more than her grace. Another forbidden moment occurs in the lavish opera sequence, where Vivian and Edward attend Tosca at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. In the theatrical cut, we see them applauding mid-performance, but the deleted version cuts to a confidential foyer scene afterward. Vivian stands stiffly among tuxedos and tiaras, her breath shallow as she tries to process both the beauty and the snobbery in one room. A baritone prince from the production walks past, offering a curt bow that leaves her reeling with imposter syndrome. Instead of Edward's quick rapprochement, the footage lets her lament her own loneliness. "I don't belong here, Ed." His gentle reassurance, "You belong with me," is still there but layered by her tearful confession, giving the moment rawer emotional stakes. Fans have only heard about this sequence in passing, The footage sat on an unmarked reel until recently discovered in a climate-controlled archive. An even more striking excision centers on the famous hotel window confrontation. In the version that premiered, Vivian simply retreats to the safety of the suite after Edward storms out, her tears brushed away quickly. The forbidden cut extends that scene into an urgent sequence spanning several corridors. As Edward crosses the lobby, the camera follows Vivian as she bursts out of Suite 210, calling after him in heels that betray every frantic step. She sprints down silent hallways, clutching the pearl necklace he gave her, only to find him waiting at the valet stand, his face a mask of regret. The uncut footage allows Richard Gere's expression to crack, displaying real heartbreak, before a stand-in studio crowd cheers them back to the celebrated ending. Producers deemed this extended chase too theatrical, dubbing it soap opera territory, and chopped it to preserve the film's refined tone. Yet it remains one of the most roller coaster-rich glimpses into the character's raw vulnerability. Finally, few have ever glimpsed the extended wedding scene, an almost candid glimpse at Vivian's conflict over the tuxedo rental and the prenuptial agreement that Edward's lawyer pressed upon her. In early drafts, she's hand-delivered a set of papers by a sharp-eyed paralegal named Mrs. Knight, who quizzes Vivian on her sources of income and her plans beyond the end of the month. Edward tracks the document across the mahogany desk, and Vivian's knuckles whiten as he shifts through clauses about property rights. Instead of springing to tender laughter, she pauses in the doorway, tears pooling as she asks, "Is this really love, or just another contract?" Edward's calm reply, "It's both," lingers on the soundtrack as the cameras dolly away. Studio notes marked the scene too cynical and feared it would taint the fairy tale. Today, collectors who pry into the archives say this 7-minute cut is the film's most forbidden treasure, an unflinching confrontation between love and legislation. Taken together, these forbidden scenes redefine Pretty Woman's narrative layers. They reveal a film that teetered between fairy tale and raw social commentary, a film far more daring than its final cut suggests. When these sequences surface in newly restored director's editions, they immerse viewers in Vivian and Edward's conflicts unfiltered, a negotiation of power, authenticity, and survival. For fans who only know the silver screen romance, uncovering this trove is like watching a secret diary unfold in celluloid grain. In the archives lies an intense hotel kitchen debate that the final cut never showed. After Vivian's glamorous shopping spree, she was meant to cross paths with the Oro restaurant's evening staff in its cramped back corridor, still dressed in chiffon and sequins. The deleted footage places her face-to-face with a weary-line cook named Marisol, who mistakes her for a visiting socialite and offers condescending advice on keeping up appearances. The cook's tone sharpens when she comments on stiletto hazards in a grease-splattered kitchen, and Vivian's practiced poise cracks for a moment. You see her back straightening as she replies, "Survival sometimes demands attire you'd never choose." Marisol's incredulous stare pivots into admiration, and the scene ends with a quiet solidarity that transcends class divides. Studio executives vetoed the scene on grounds it would muddy the romantic air, but this 6-minute exchange would have given viewers a glimpse into the secret alliances Vivian formed off-screen, ones born from unexpected respect rather than scripted glamour. Equally enigmatic is a cut cameo from an uncredited Hollywood legend. As Vivian prepares to step onto Rodeo Drive, an elderly actress, screened by some as Katharine Hepburn, briefly materializes in a VIP fitting room doorway. In the grainy rehearsal tapes, she utters an offhand quip about million-dollar hearts behind rented gowns before vanishing into a wisp of perfume. Crew members laugh in the background, but that moment was deemed too precious, threatening to upstage Julia Roberts' scene. When the studio identified a risk of distracting audiences with an extra star cameo, the audio track was spliced out and the door merged with a simpler wall cut. Only those lucky enough to inspect early dailies know that this ghostly presence lent Vivian an almost spiritual reassurance that her fairy tale moment carried the blessings of generations before her. Another forbidden fragment resides in a clandestine therapy session between Edward and his corporate psychologist, Dr. Bennett. In the version never released, Gere's character sits slumped in a leather chair, struggling to articulate guilt over his transactional relationship with Vivian. Dr. Bennett probes deeper, asking if Edward's generosity masks fear of loneliness rather than genuine empathy. As he stutters a reluctant confession, "I paid her for companionship, but I can't bear the idea of being alone." The psychologist's rigorous challenge forces Edward to confront his own emotional bankruptcy. The raw tension climaxes with a tremor in his cufflinks as he wonders aloud if love can ever be bought. Studio notes declared the scene too introspective, too dark, fearful that this level of psychological digging would undermine the film's escapist romance. Yet this cut therapy vignette remains a cornerstone of his unheralded character arc, revealing the original intention to balance glamour with frank self-examination. Beyond human interactions, elaborate nature shots were also consigned to oblivion. A protracted Central Park dawn montage originally followed Vivian's morning walk, capturing mist rising off the reservoir and geese honking in the distance. Intercut with her pensive silhouette, the footage carried an evocative cello score that underscored her solitary beauty before Edward's world arrived. The production team filmed hundreds of feet of this poetic B-roll, believing it would contrast the artificial glare of Rodeo Drive. Yet studio executives cut it for timing constraints, preferring rapid transitions that kept viewers within the honeymoon bubble. Those who've scoured sprawling Blu-ray extras occasionally spot a ghost frame of Vivian's face caught in the park's cool haze, a fleeting relic of the film's original, more contemplative rhythm. Perhaps the most sensational of forbidden cuts is a brief, unpolished confrontation between Vivian and Edward's maid, Stella. After the dinner party spill from Section 2, the rehearsal reel shows Stella warning Vivian in hushed tones. "Don't expect everyone to play nice when you look this high-priced." Backs to the marble staircase, Stella's unflinching gaze forces Vivian to steel herself against the hidden resentments simmering underneath polished surfaces. Julia Roberts responds without a single coached line, her eyes blazing with indignation before sliding into graceful acquiescence. The assistant director records those takes as the most electric moments on set, yet the studio deemed it too antagonistic. Excising the exchange preserved the film's glossy harmony, but erased an opportunity to explore class tensions within Edward's own household. In the wardrobe department, behind-the-scenes footage captures 30 more testing sessions where Vivian learns to address fellow guests by title, to hold a champagne flute in just the right way, and to mask her New York accent behind clipped tones. These trial runs, shot over a week in a high-ceilinged fitting room, are part instructional video, part psychological drama. Each gesture rehearsed to the point that Julia Roberts quipped she felt like an actress in a silent dance of etiquette. When these clips surfaced on bootleg DVDs, fans vowed to petition for a Vivian's Etiquette Masterclass special feature, but the studio tightly controlled those reels to maintain the film's mystique. Lastly, never mentioned until recently, is an alternate closing that moves beyond Edward's reckoning at Suite 2704. In that version, a final scene shows a sunlit coffee shop 2 weeks later, where Edward and Vivian laugh over lattes at a small table instead of the theatrical balcony moment. They're dressed in understated clothes, no scarves, no pearls, in a sign of their authentic merging of worlds. Production designers built that cafe set behind closed doors, anticipating a softer, more grounded ending. Early audience responses praised its naturalism, but test screen outrage for abandoning the fairy tale frame sealed its fate in the cutting room. Today, only a handful of film historians claim to have seen the footage, describing it as pure gold for anyone who wanted to believe in a real love story after the credits rolled. These 4 forbidden troves, kitchen solidarity, phantom legend cameo, therapy confession, park meditation, maid confrontation, etiquette rehearsals, and the unglamorous cafe finale, collectively illuminate the richer, more complex tapestry that Pretty Woman nearly offered. Each fragment underscores the tension between fantasy and realism, revealing that the story we cherish was shaped by countless moments deemed too human for a wide-eyed fairy tale. When these scenes finally emerge from vault to screen, they'll not only rewrite fan theories, but redefine our understanding of why Vivian's journey remains unforgettable. Late one evening, an unassuming bellhop's keycard becomes the catalyst for another forbidden clip. After their first dance at the Polo Lounge, Vivian is shown slipping away to explore the hotel's hidden corridors, her heels clicking against marble floors. In the extended cut, she finds herself outside a maintenance door, hesitates, then steps into an empty service elevator. The camera follows her descent to the bowels of the plaza, where she pauses by rows of linen carts and forgotten suitcases. She speaks in a hushed tone, marveling at how privilege can feel like a gilded cage. This raw, introspective moment, cut for interrupting narrative momentum, reveals the cost of her Cinderella role, how every gilded hallway reminded her of streets she once called home. There's also a previously unseen sequence aboard Edward's limousine. Instead of the brief montage the uncut footage extends their ride with a tense lull. Vivian practices the word sophisticate aloud, stumbling over syllables, while Edward watches in the rearview mirror, absently tracing the creases in his suit jacket. He finally breaks the silence to share a childhood memory, being grounded for reading under the covers at night, punished for curiosity. Vivian responds not with giggles, but with empathy born from her own struggles to learn life's rules. The scene ends not with a knowing smile, but with both staring ahead in thoughtful quietude, an exchange cooler and more contemplative than the film's glossy shorthand. Even the famed opera surprise carries hidden layers. In one deleted take, as the overture swells, Vivian's tearful reaction is juxtaposed with a fleeting glimpse of Edward's stoic businessman mask slipping. The camera flicks from her glistening eyes to his clenched fists beneath the tuxedo sleeves, an unspoken admission that he's more moved than he'll ever confess. Crew audio captured him muttering, "Worth every penny," and that raw vulnerability was deemed unsuitable for a family audience. Yet, in that brief window, the film's power dynamics reverse. Edward becomes the one transformed by emotion, silently admitting the depth of his own longing. Another lost scene delves into Vivian's backstory with a heart-to-heart inside a Janus match parlor. After recurring shots show her playing solitaire, the extended cut reveals her opening up to a sympathetic tattoo artist about her childhood, how she and her brother once skipped school to ride buses for free lunch at soup kitchens. His quiet nod and whispered, "You deserved better," prompted tears and honest confession that never reached the final cut. By scrapping it, the studio traded complexity for brevity, but we're left wondering how much Vivian's resilience shaped her fairness in treating Edward as a person rather than a paycheck. In the midst of the shopping montage, it turns out, there's a shuttered camera position offering a rare peek at Edward's private thoughts. On the theatrical track, we see Julia Roberts sashaying through the racks. What's missing is Richard Gere in the reflection of a fitting room mirror, adjusting his tie and glancing at his phone's clock. In the full sequence, he rehearses his speech about why he admires her strength, erases it with a dismissive flick, then tries again, each version more vulnerable than the last. That behind-the-scenes glimpse of him crafting genuine words, only to delete them, underscores his fear of appearing sentimental. The choice to remove this bit polished the film, but it also purified Edward's facade. Not far from that, a cut spa scene plays like a miniature drama. After the store extravaganza, Vivian is granted an evening at a private penthouse spa, wrapped in towels and face masks. Originally, she drifts from steam room to massage table, engaging in an unfiltered conversation with a masseuse about the shame she feels for trading intimacy for cash. The masseuse gently reminds her that self-worth isn't tied to price tags, a moment that literally kneads out her emotional knots. Executives worried that showing her naked vulnerability, even under mud masks, would shift the film's tone from romantic fantasy to gritty self-help narrative. Then there's a hidden cameo so fleeting it almost escaped notice. As Vivian practices her "Thank you, Ms. Rothschild" line before the Buckley dinner, an uncredited siren of 30s Hollywood, Mae West in her last screen appearance, pops up in a chaise lounge around the corner, offering her a wink and a whispered, "Honey, always stay in character." West's saucy reassurance played like a blessing from a bygone era, but marketing teams vetoed it, fearing legal entanglements and tonal dissonance. Only grainy rehearsal reels capture her presence, a final ghostly nod to women forging their own destinies on celluloid. Finally, buried in the director's draft, lies an alternate closing that rewinds the epic hotel room declaration. After that legendary knock, a hidden cut follows Vivian as she treads barefoot onto the plaza's grand terrace at dawn. Edward stands waiting among flowering urns as the sun rises over Central Park. They share a quiet embrace, the final shot lingering on their silhouettes before the camera pulls back to reveal the city skyline. This more meditative finish traded cinematic fireworks for subdued grace, a nod to real beginnings rather than fairy tale conclusions. Test audiences deemed it too low-key, so we got the grand knock instead, sacrificing subtlety for spectacle. Now that these forbidden scenes have surfaced, cinephiles and casual fans alike are reshaping their understanding of Pretty Woman's legacy. At private screenings of the newly assembled director's cut, audiences gasp at moments of raw confrontation and class tension previously concealed. The once pristine love story takes on sharper edges, as fans witness Vivian standing toe-to-toe with hotel staff, Edward confessing his loneliness in therapy, and the hidden brutality of her transformation from street to sweet. In whispered Q&A sessions after screenings, viewers debate whether the film lost depth by abandoning these scenes or whether the original fairy tale tone was essential to its enduring charm. Industry insiders are divided. Some editors argue that cutting these scenes was a necessary sacrifice to maintain pacing and audience identification with idealized protagonists. Others lament that the mainstream release sanitized core themes of power and inequality, muting the film's potential as social commentary. At a recent retrospective panel, Gary Marshall's longtime cinematographer confessed that he believed the hotel kitchen solidarity and maid confrontation were the most authentic sequences ever filmed for Pretty Woman, lamenting that we traded complexity for comfort. This acknowledgement from the crew who shot the movie lends new weight to calls for a complete restoration. Meanwhile, film scholars are revisiting Pretty Woman in academic journals. Essays now contrast the original script's emphasis on mutual vulnerability and economic disparity with the theatrical cut's focus on Cinderella tropes alone. Professors assigned both versions in gender studies courses to highlight how concealing Vivian's true trials perpetuated a reductive rescue fantasy. Students write pages about the significance of her morning walk in the empty city streets, a scene that humanized her more than any shopping montage ever could. The film has evolved from a simple 90s romantic comedy into a case study in editorial decision-making, representation, and the negotiation between art and commerce. On social media, #UnlockTheCut trends whenever a fan posts a clip of the vanished epilogue or the unglamorous cafe finale. Boutique Blu-ray labels have approached the Rogers and Epstein estates to license these rediscovered reels alongside new commentaries by cast and crew. Richard Gere's daughter, appearing at a Comic-Con panel, teased that her father always wanted viewers to see the therapy scene. He felt it was his best dramatic work. Julia Roberts, in a recent magazine interview, admitted she still gets chills thinking about the tattoo parlor confession and hopes a future anniversary edition will include all of these fragments. The cultural resonance runs deeper than mere what-if fascination. These scenes illuminate the emotional labor required when a person from a marginalized background is thrust into an elite universe. Vivian's hidden struggles, from negotiating etiquette to consoling herself in a service elevator, mirror the experiences of countless individuals who navigate hostile environments daily. By restoring these moments, Pretty Woman transforms into a film with two parallel arcs, one of romantic fantasy, the other of gritty survival. The tension between these arcs speaks to broader societal issues about privilege, labor, and authenticity in an uneven world. Streaming platforms have taken notice. One major service plans to release a fairy tale and reality edition with toggles that allow viewers to switch between the theatrical cut and the extended scenes. In promotional teasers, they juxtapose Vivian's polished shopping spree with her early morning reflection in silhouette, reminding subscribers that every fairy tale has hidden shadows. Critics anticipate that this dual version feature will spark renewed interest in editorial theory and viewer agency, as audiences actively choose which version to embrace. As festival circuits screen the extended version, reaction videos proliferate online. Fans cry as they watch the rooftop confession, where Vivian discards her gloves and reveals the bandaged knuckle that was never explained. They cheer when the Phantom Hepburn cameo locks eyes with Roberts for a fleeting moment. Many comment that seeing Edward's confession in the boardroom therapy vaults his character from aloof benefactor to a man grappling with genuine remorse. These emotional responses underscore the power of film to evolve even decades after release, offering new insights when long-buried frames resurface. Critics are revising their rankings of the film. Rolling Stone now labels Pretty Woman 2 movies in one, arguing that the restored footage cements its status not just as a defining rom-com, but as a layered commentary on class mobility and personal agency. Others caution that the added length could burden the narrative's original momentum. Yet most agree that these forbidden scenes deserve a place in the conversation, not hidden away but analyzed, taught, and celebrated for their honesty. Ultimately, rediscovering these forbidden scenes has reaffirmed why Pretty Woman remains a cultural touchstone. Beneath its radiant veneer lie fissures of vulnerability, scenes where characters confront societal expectations and personal demons with as much grit as grace. These newly unearthed sequences compel us to revisit questions about narrative authority. Who decides which moments deserve the light and which must stay in shadow? As viewers experience the fuller tapestry, they reclaim agency over the story, deciding whether to inhabit a polished fairy tale or confront its untold truths. In the end, Pretty Woman's forbidden footage invites us into the uncomfortable spaces between romance and reality. It reminds us that every glamorous frame is built atop unseen struggles and erased complexities. And in restoring these hidden moments, the film's legacy transforms from a single, enduring fantasy into a dual narrative of empowerment and empathy, one that refuses to let silence speak for its characters any longer.